The pen tool in Photoshop is an extremely powerful vector tool, and it can be used to a lot of different ends. I use it primarily for making complicated selections because, unlike the lasso tool, it won't disappear if I close my file, and it won't disappear if I click off of it accidentally. There's some great other uses for it. You can create vector shapes such as the one we just looked at. You can also do things like vector masks, which we probably won't get to, but that's in the next class. It's pretty interesting. And the pen tool that we learned here translates very well across many other different graphics design programs. In fact, most of Adobe's programs have a pen that works similarly. Now, if you've ever worked in Illustrator, some of this will be familiar to you. The key commands are all pretty much the same. There might be just a tiny difference or two, but I've found that it translates fairly well between the two programs. So, here we go. Let's start with the pen tool. It is underneath the Dodge Burn tool on your toolbox. It looks like a calligraphy pen. If you click on it, you'll notice that you have a pen tool and then a freeform pen tool and a couple others such as add anchor point, delete anchor point, and convert point tool. Now we will be using these, and I will be using the key commands for these because very similar to selections, it just takes so much time if you have to run back to the toolbox for each change between these tools when there's just a couple quick keys that will do it for you. Now I will show this tutorial once with coming back to these, but then I'm going to use the quick keys, and I would encourage you very much to learn the quick keys for this one. Alright, so here's our pen tools. They are also grouped with the other vector tools of Photoshop. So the type tool is actually a vector tool, and then below the type tool are your path selection tools. So you might have a black arrow showing or maybe a white one, and the white one is what we'll probably use the most. It's called the direct selection tool, sometimes just called the white arrow if you're reading somebody else's tutorials. And beneath that is shapes, but we'll get to that in lesson 10. So for now, click on the pen tool and then make sure you've got the pen tool. The shortcut for that is P as in pen, and let's take a look at the tool control bar. The very first one is a setting where you can, pretty much all the tools have this by the way, where you can do presets. Once you get everything set the way you love it, you can choose a new tool preset, but we probably won't be using that this one. The next one is, what do you want it to be? Do you want it to be just a shape, and that will create layers in your layers panel, or do you want it to be a path, which will create layers in your paths panel? For this one, we're going to use shape. We will get to paths later. The next one is the fill color for the shape, and we want to set that to none. Now up here at the top there's a white box with a red line through it. That is none, so click on that one. And then the stroke, let's choose a color for that one that will show up well against the background. So I'm going to choose let's go for an orange on mine. And then the next one is going to be the stroke width. And that's the line that we'll be creating, and I'm going to set mine to just be 1 point. The next one is I think it's the stroke style. I'm forgetting off the top of my head what this is called. Let's see what our prompt says. Set shape stroke type. Boy, I say that one 5 times fast. So let's click on that and then choose the solid line option, and then also come down here to these 3, and we are going to change the first one, the align one, to the middle option, which will put the stroke equally on both sides of the path line. Once you're done looking there, the next ones we really won't even touch on, and these are more for the shape that we'll get to next week. So your settings should look just like this, and I'm not going to even worry about the rest of these, I think, for the end of this lesson. So let's get started. With the shape created, when you create, with your shape option selected, it will create layers in your layers panel. So let's set our very first point. It's called an anchor point. And you'll notice as we do these that the symbols by your pen will change. Right now it looks like a little asterisk star. That just means that you're going to place a point if you click. So click once on the number 1 circle, and there will be a little tiny square that will appear. You probably can't see it on my screen. And then click on the number 2, and that will create a line between those 2 points. That is a path. So let's put a point at number 3. And I'm going to set my point below number 4 just so I can show you this next little bit. Now, unlike our lasso, like I said, we can jump to other tools and then come back to this and it will be just fine. So I'm going to grab my zoom tool and zoom in on this number 4 so I'm a little bit closer. Next I'll grab my pen tool, and what I want to do is adjust this point so that it is actually over this one. Now I don't need to delete it or undo in this case. What I really need is my white direct selection arrow. So over here in my tool panel I'm going to grab that selection arrow, which is the white one, and then I can click on that point and drag it up to where I want it to be. Now if there's any of these other points that you want to readjust, you can pan around and just nudge them. In fact, if you click on one, you can even use your arrow keys to nudge it around if it's a really specific nudge. We need to finish this line, however, so grab your pen tool again or hit the letter P. If you hover over the last point that you set, you'll see a little diagonal line appear next to your pen. That means that if you click here, you'll continue the line. So let's click there and then click on 5. Alright, now we need to end this line because right now if I clicked anywhere else I'd actually continue my line. I'm going to hit undo, Command Z. To end a line or to get off of a path, you can hit the escape key or hold down Command and just click anywhere out on the window and that will take you off. And you'll notice that the little anchor points that we just set will disappear. If you ever want to get those back, all you need to do is make sure you're on that layer and grab either your pen tool or your direct selection tool, and if you click on that, that will grab it. Now the direct selection tool, which I thought I had, here we go, the white arrow, if we click on one of those it will let us move a point. There we go, it moved 2 because I had 2 selected. You can also select more than one point to effect if you hold down Shift, kind of like when you're selecting or adding to a selection. You can add multiple points. You can also click and drag to select an area of points. Alright, so we've made your first path. And in fact, I think I clicked off somewhere because I've got a second path in here. There we go. I've probably just got a random point sitting out there somewhere and it's invisible, so I'm going to delete my Shape 2 layer. And that's exercise 1. So let's move down to letter B and take a look at that one. So again, let's grab pen tool and just leave the settings the way they are and do pretty much the same thing. Pick a point, click on it, and start clicking around like you're playing, you know, good old dot to dot game. Now, I, rather deliberately I might add, just put a point further out than I wanted to put it on this star. So here I've got my pen tool. I did zoom in on it, yes, but now I've got my pen tool again. Instead of coming over here to grab my white arrow, I'm going to hold the Command key down. Anytime you're using the pen tool, if you hold the Command key down, you get the white direct selection tool, which is really useful because it's a quick way to get a tool that you'll use quite a bit. So then I would click on this point to tell it, okay, I'm going to continue my line and keep going. If you don't click on that point, it's quite likely you will create a second or another shape layer. Now it's very important that you understand that you should keep these all as one, well, I guess I should say each one of these separate objects will be its own shape layer. So if I zoom back here, oh man, I just like rambled on and totally forgot to show you. And I'm going to just undo and come back here. So stepping back, I'm not even going to start re-recording because I'm a little short on time. I've stepped back in my history a couple times, which was Command Option Z. I've got my pen tool. I'm going to click on the last pen mark that I did and continue on, click. And then to close my path is what we want to do here. And if you hover over the first point that you set, you'll get a little circle by your pen, and that means if you click, you will close that path. Once you close the path, all the little points will disappear, but you're still on that shape. And remember, you can always grab your direct selection tool by holding down the command key and click and drag around where you know a point is if you wanted to grab it, or just click on a spot and go for it. Now here's why we closed this shape. Once it's a closed shape, you can add a fill color to it. So up here in our control bar, you can set a fill color. Now, I have several colors here. I have no idea what your computer looks like, but you can add additional colors by clicking on the color picker box up here and choosing a color. And when you say OK, it will add it up here to kind of a traveling set. So these colors up here aren't permanent. If you want to permanently add it as a swatch, then you can click down in here. So this actually shows your swatches. So here I've got a fill color set. I'm going to change mine to yellow just because that's what stars tend to be, and call it good. Now if you want to move a shape layer, it's just like any other layer. You can grab your move tool and move it, and that moves the actual whole entire layer. So here I'm going to zoom back just a little bit and take a look at what we've got. So point clicking is clicking once from dot to dot to end a path so that you don't drag lines all over the place. You can hold down Command and click on anywhere else on the screen, or just push your escape key. And with the settings the way we have them up in our control bar, I have an auto add and delete option, and then this first drop down square says new layer. So every time I start a new path, it will create a new shape layer over here in my layer box. We will get to working with paths, just the path itself and not necessarily a shape layer, but that will be next week. And let's move on to the next tutorial.